Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Banking on Experience. I'm your host, James Gilbert. I'm really excited about today's episode because we're going to be talking about educating the financial services industry. We're going to be joined by Service Credit Union with two individuals who are super amazing, and I can't wait to hear their thoughts. Also, if I could ask everybody that listens to this podcast to rate it, just go in there and rate it. I don't care if you give it a 1-star rating or a 2-star rating, but if you could rate it, great. We would appreciate that. That just gets it in front of more people. And hopefully we're providing some really, really good content for everybody. Thanks. All right, welcome to this episode. Super excited about this. We have two individuals joined with us today. We have Anna Baskin and we have Wendy Beswick from Service Credit Union. How are you both doing?
Doing well. Thanks, James.
Yeah, thanks for having us, James. Great.
I'm excited to talk to you guys because I think this is a topic that I think the credit union industry in particular has an opportunity to really be a power player here. We've worked with like Zogo Finance and some of the other partners that do some of this stuff really, really well. And it's very interesting to me how it's become a topic, especially for Gen Y and Gen Z, in getting more what I'll call share of the wallet for a credit union and getting into more households. So I'm especially excited about that. But before we get into it, I'd actually like you guys to introduce yourselves and your credit union. So Wendy, would you mind doing us that honor?
You know, I've have a little over 25 years of experience in financial services. I've been in the investment industry most of my career, but the last 8 years have been with credit unions, and I have an operations and a marketing background. And in my role at Service Credit Union, I oversee our marketing efforts, communication, our foundation, and our financial wellness. And then a little bit about the credit union. You know, we were founded in 1957 to serve airmen and their families at Pease Air Force Base. And we now have a little over 800 employees and over 50 branches. We serve 300,000 members across the world.
So I'm a little bit newer to the credit union industry. I've been with Service Credit Union for 2.5 years, but prior to that, my experience is really in journalism, marketing, and public relations, working a little bit in the magazine world, the former magazine world, and at ad agencies. So yeah, this has been a great learning experience for me. So I brought in those skills of content marketing to my current role where I'm a content manager at the credit union.
I actually found out about Anna through CU Insight, which is not an uncommon thing to hear on our podcast. I find a lot of folks on there. So Anna wrote a fantastic article about this very topic. And I think that I always like to ask our guests a question that kind of gets the ball rolling a little bit. But when it comes to financial education, what's a commonly held belief that everyone believes or most believe in the CU world and you guys might disagree with?
I think a lot of people sort of think that credit unions are not like banks, but that we have the same set of products that we can serve and offer the same technology, same services. So I think there's this belief out there that credit unions don't do what banks do. And we actually do. What I thought was so interesting the other day, I was reading that credit unions now serve 124 million people across the world, and our assets and our member growth is up 15% from last year. So it's just fascinating to me that we're in the middle of a pandemic and credit unions were born in the Great Depression. So I think that people are turning to their credit unions now more than ever, and I think that it's a great time to be a credit union.
I 100% agree with you. Like, more people are turning to their credit unions more than ever right now. And by the way, that service mentality, especially in the community, credit unions can do better than banks, I would say. So there's an advantage, I think, from a credit union perspective, that they're serving in their communities better than anyone. And I think from that perspective, I think that's also just an added flavor that you can add to the mix. So let's talk about why we chose this topic. Why financial education?
I think something that's been very startling to me working here is seeing a lot of studies that say just how, what small percentage of Americans have at least $400 or $500 saved up for an emergency. It's like a staggering amount of people that don't even have that amount of savings. So we want to be able to make sure that our members' financial needs are met and that they're not struggling. So I think it's really important to teach people savings from a very early age. And on top of that, there's so many other things that people don't really understand. They don't understand how loans or credit cards necessarily work and end up in a tremendous amount of debt. More people than you would imagine do that as well. I talk to people who I think are fairly intelligent, and they'll tell me, I just thought it was free money and I just kept buying things, and it's kind of scary. So, as being a credit union with the mission of improving members' financial well-being, we really have to start with that education portion.
What about you, Wendy?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that Anna said. I think too that it's also, we want to get in front of members when they're young and early too. It's really critical. We teach classes here to middle schoolers and to high school students and beyond that to even, young adults that are out in the community. But I think the earlier we can teach a member how important it is to save and how to just do the basics of budgeting and understand credit cards. I can't believe how many people we do talk to, members too, who just don't understand the basics of how a credit card works and even how personal loans work, some of the kind of standard things that for us, we kind of take it for granted. Those are pretty simple financial products, but just a lot of individuals, aren't taught financial education in the school curriculum. It doesn't, New Hampshire doesn't require financial wellness necessarily as part of, just graduating from high school. So I think it's important to start early.
Yeah, I also love the fact that this also ties into some of those core values that I think a credit union has, which is able to serve the community, right? And that's what you guys are talking about. It's very present and very real, the fact that there's an opportunity here for credit unions to really take charge in educating people within the community that haven't been able to be educated with finances. I know that me growing up, my mom was a single mom of 6 kids, right? And hardworking mom, worked her whole life, 35 years in the healthcare industry as a home care nurse. And as great of a mom as she was, she didn't have time to sit down with us all the time and teach us about finances. And it's stuff that I had to learn really quick and on my own. And some of those lessons were hard lessons. Some of those lessons were exactly what Anna was talking about, getting into debt, which is what some of the things that I think a lot of the people in this country regret is some of those decisions. And if we can help prevent that, I think that's also just doing future generations a greater service there. So where can credit unions get started with this? If they want to start educating their members, what's the first place that they could do that?
It may sound overwhelming, but even something as simple as just starting with content. We started with the blog, and we started where we were only doing a few blogs a month, and we kind of share that with others across our team. So it doesn't necessarily have to be just one individual's responsibility. I think if your credit union can partner with local organizations, even on the business side, which we do, or chambers, ultimately, if you can set aside even one person to focus on financial wellness, that's of course really helps get your efforts, much further down the road than it being kind of a side thing that you do. And you can put a lot more priority on what you're doing and really get in front of your members and help them achieve their goals and what they're struggling with as well.
Like Wendy said earlier, getting started at a young age is great too. We previously had a program called CU for Reality, where we would do in-person fairs with junior high school students. We would either go to their school, or they would come to our corporate office, and we had these little stations set up that basically reflect every part of your life that you need to spend money on. So everybody is assigned a job and they get their set salary for the year. And it's like, oh, so what kind of card can you pick with a salary? What kind of housing will you have? Even what kind of entertainment can you afford? And then you sit down with a budget counselor to see if your decisions make sense. We actually ended up making that into app-based learning, which I think is a really cool way to experience it. And, it makes it almost easier that you don't have to go anywhere. So shifting that over to an app has been a cool way to keep those younger kids learning about budgeting at a young age.
I love it because I think that they learn it in a different way than we all maybe grew up and learned. And I have younger kids, and we try to get them off of electronics, but it's like a magnet to them,
I hear you. I have little kids too. Yeah. Even the 1-year-old who, it's hard once you have your second kid, all the screen time rules go out the window, but we're like, oh yeah, he won't watch anything. But obviously as soon as a TV or phone or anything is turned on, it's like a shiny magic light.
Yeah, it's like, it really is. It's this magnet that they're just drawn to. And for some reason, you could have the exact same thing on paper, and it could be the exact same thing on a screen. And for some reason, they will retain what's on the screen more than they will on the paper. And I don't know why that is, but it's how they're wired. And I think that we have to do our part as businesses to continually shift and change. And I think that the pandemic is also is almost requiring us to make those changes now more than ever. It's not one of those things where we can wait to make the change. It's now we actually have to. We're almost required to make it.
We had some other in-person events we were excited about that we had to move virtual, but those have been pretty successful as well, which we're really pleased about. We were really excited. We were going to do this series of home buying classes at bars. Couldn't really go to bars anymore, but we took it virtual, and we actually have been streaming from bars and local vineyards and having people, enjoy a glass of wine with us from their home, and then they get a little certificate or credit to spend at the local vineyard. So it helps boost small business. They get the exposure. People get to learn about home buying in a casual environment. So like I mentioned with the app, by turning these kind of events virtual too, it's actually made it easier for people to join because you don't have to commit to driving somewhere after work. You're already home. All you have to do is log on. So I think there are a lot of things that we've learned in the pandemic that once hopefully it subsides and we can get together again, it might still make sense to do some of these things virtually because it is easier for people to connect that way sometimes.
I have to ask, I wasn't planning on asking this, but it's now my mind is kind of turning a little bit. What gets the creative juices flowing for your team to come up with these innovative ideas, like the wine idea? What gets those creative juices flowing?
Coffee?
Coffee. Yeah, coffee always helps. Caffeine always helps. I mean, we're always trying to push the envelope and do things differently. And so we actually have a huge effort to digitize a lot of what we're doing. And the CU for Reality classes that we did, we actually had that all available pre-pandemic. And we were just doing that to get out of the paper. And the kids love it because they're using their phone. And we just talked about that, how much they love their phone. But for us, we want to do things in a little bit of a different way too. And our team we have folks on the team who are coming from all different industries, healthcare, hospitality. We have somebody on the team that used to run marketing for NASCAR. So just, all those different industries, Anna's background being in the agency space. And I think that diversity really, really helps our team just be super creative and kind of get out there in a unique way.
What are some challenges that you think credit unions should prepare for? I mean, you guys were a little bit ahead of the game here. Obviously, there's different challenges now, but what should they prepare for?
I think next year the pandemic is with us, right, for a little bit longer, unfortunately. So I think anything a credit union can do to partner with local businesses, like Anna mentioned, what we're doing with our Home Buying on Tap series and foster small business is huge. The chambers are still, at least in our neck of the woods, are doing all of their events virtually. So that's a great way to partner with a local organization that the chambers are pretty practiced at what they do. So if your team is resource constrained, you could kind of link into the chamber and sponsor a few events. And I think everyone should just get comfortable being on video and doing things virtually because that is the way that, we're communicating now. And so if you can do that with your members or with your small businesses locally and get in front of individuals in a bigger way, it's a terrific vehicle to communicate. And you can record the sessions, which I think we started doing recently. So then you have that content. And if Anna does a great job for us and shares it out socially and gets it on our website and gets it in front of members through email. And so I just think there's a lot of opportunities to do more than what you used to be able to do and get your message out in a bigger way.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that you had mentioned kind of ties into some of the other areas that I wanted to ask you guys about, and that's that contactless environment that we're in, right? And I mean, you bring up a really good point. And I think that I think that all of us are sick of Zooms. I don't think that's like unusual. But that being said, like there's an advantage here that's kind of forced all of us to use technology more than ever. And I think it's also going to benefit the future of business simply from the standpoint of now, because of us getting so familiar with the technology and doing this, we're now having to think about more innovative ways to move digitally, right? Coming back to one of your very first points on, what makes a credit union different and how there are similarities to banks, and oftentimes that gets misunderstood. And now credit unions are having to move faster to a digital environment, right? I would even say same with community banks that aren't there yet, right? And the reason why is because you have these big players that are coming at it, right? And they're doing everything digitally, almost no branches, right? That's where there's an advantage here where credit unions can bring in the human side of a lot of the just connections that they create with their members, the community involvement that they have. I know locally here in Utah, some of the credit unions actually work with different churches, and they go into the churches because a lot of times when people are in financial trouble, they go into a church and they ask for help, right? Or even some charities as well. There's some credit unions here in Utah that work with the churches and the charities, and they go there first to try and help educate people that are already in financial trouble. And I think that's another area that I think is important for credit unions to get involved with. I mean, it can be the commerce level, right? Chamber of Commerce level, but it can also be, charities, it can be churches, it can be all those areas that I think that people just naturally, that's where they turn to get help.
Yeah, we do a lot with, like for us, because we're a defense credit union, there's a ton of veteran organizations here. And then we partner with the USO overseas where we have branches on military bases. And we do a lot with non-for-profits locally and overseas to help. And credit unions are already doing that. So it feels like a very natural extension for them to be there for their community.
So I want to finish the episode off by asking both of you, if there was the poster child of somebody who is doing this really, really well, and even if it was your own credit union service, that's fine. Talk to us about some examples of either credit unions or other financial institutions that you feel like are doing this really, really well, and talk to the listeners about why they're doing it well.
I know Wendy follows a lot on Twitter and sees what everybody's doing on there. I think Ally is one that comes up a lot as very creative with what they're sharing on social media. I think they've done a lot of financial education pushes as well. Of course, I would love to advertise us nonstop too. I think we've stepped it up a lot in the past year. We have partnered with Everfi, which is pretty huge to help people. We have customized playlists that people can follow about any financial topic from credit cards, loans to mortgages, really teaching people the basics, trying to put out more engaging content. We have a lot of things in the works that I'm excited about in the next few months. But yeah, I mean, I think everybody is trying hard, and it's hard to say who started what just because, there's a lot of copying. But
those credit unions that are not as familiar with Everfi, give us an idea of who they are, what they're about. And, I know that you had mentioned some of the areas that they're helping you with, but maybe other credit unions might be able to find benefit in working with them as well. What are they about?
So Everfi, they're amazing. They're headquartered in DC, and they work with schools and credit unions. So they can actually go out and teach on your behalf if you don't have a team to do that. And they partner with you to create content that you can digitize across social media, your website, email, but they work with you on a much more personal level to customize what you're doing for financial education for your members, for your credit union. And so for us, that means doing a lot with establishing credit because we serve a lot of young military members. And so they're in a space where, they need to get their first car, their first credit card, and they might not have any credit history when they join the credit union. So we do a lot around that. And we do a lot around, I think, every credit union. I don't think we're unique in this way in terms of just house buying, education, and how to prepare for your first mortgage, how to get through that process. And there's a lot of that content seems to be our most popular content. But Everfi is a a terrific resource. Savvy Money's another really good resource that credit unions can also use too. So they're similar. They have some differences. And then we also partner with GreenPath, who I know a lot of credit unions use, but they offer in-person counseling. So we have members who will go to there's a few different spots in New Hampshire, and they can get in-person counseling and get on a plan to kind of get out of debt and get to where they need to be. So I feel like there's a lot out there. I don't know. I'm kind of like Anna. I don't know if I can name any one institution that's doing it really well. I see community banks doing some really cool things. There's a bank in Oklahoma that I follow the CEO a lot. And I follow some banks in the UK, like Startling Bank just does some pretty cool things. But I think everybody can do even more, including us. But I'm super proud of what we've done this year, because we've kind of taken what we did for schools and middle schools and even elementary schools overseas and here in New Hampshire, and we've really blown it out and reaching a lot more consumers and on a broader level. So it's pretty cool to see how our team has grown our efforts in a very short amount of time.
I mean, the idea of home buying on tap, that's pretty brilliant. I'm not going to lie. Like, I think that's a really, really good idea. So kudos to you guys for that. But I did want to say thank you for joining us today on the podcast. It's been a pleasure. I would love for you to give the audience and the listeners an idea of if they wanted to reach out to Wendy or Anna, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter. Gwen Bryant is my handle, and I'm there pretty much daily. So that's where I'm at.
I'm not as active on Twitter as Wendy, but I'm there and I'm listening, and I'm just at Anna Baskin.
Awesome. Thank you both for joining us. Kudos to Service Credit Union for the amazing job you guys are doing, to the whole team there. And I ask again, the listeners that are listening, please go in and rate our podcast. We'd love to get it in front of more credit unions and more community banks. Thanks again for joining us.